Hello there, and welcome to the Subscriber of the Month podcast for the month of January. Our Subscriber of the Month was NLH in a bunch of numbers. And I'm here with Nolan. Hello, Nolan.
Hey, Brad, how's it going?
To talk about Final Fantasy XII. I will say that when NLH won Subscriber of the Month, a lot of us thought he might have been a spam bot. But
The thing that was confusing is why would a spam bot subscribe?
yeah, that's weird, right? But
I would like a whole lot more spam bots subscribing to us. That'd be
that
nice.
would be cool. Maybe share the wealth. Jeez. But
Right?
but seriously, NLH in like 6 or 7 numbers. It was insane. And none of us had ever heard of him. But you know what? That doesn't mean he wasn't a fan, and that doesn't mean he wasn't a supporter of Four Player Network. In fact, some people when they create their name on Twitch just don't give a shit, like Garth
Yeah.
Brooks forever or whatever.
Garth Brooks #1
Garth-
fan, #1 or whatever.
Anyways, we are here to celebrate his choice and to talk about Final Fantasy
So-
12.
I will say real quick, NLH, I did speak with him over email a little bit,
Mhm.
and he's saying he's a huge fan of us, and just the issue is he's super busy right now in life, and so he never really has time to pop in and out of chat. And he did actually a few times, even while I was broadcasting Final Fantasy 12. I assume he just was a little more active this month because he was subscriber of the month.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was just saying just because he's so busy, but yeah, he subscribed because he wants to help us out,
For sure.
which is much appreciated. But yeah, he seemed like a pretty cool guy, and also he was too busy to be on the podcast today.
Well, we definitely understand the too busy thing. In fact, there's still a couple other subscriber of the month podcasts that we need to get to, but hopefully they understand that as well. But we'll get to them eventually. But we're tired to talk about Final Fantasy 12, a game that I got to be honest with you. At the time I had wrapped up this game, I was
Mhm.
like, this is one of my favorite Final Fantasies.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Back in like 2006.
Yeah,
or
I
something?
played it when it first came out.
2007, whatever. Yeah.
When it first came out. Actually, I was a little bit torn because this game came out like right at the same time of Tales of the Abyss, which I was super excited at the time because I had played all the Tales games up to that
Mhm.
point, and so it was sort of like it was two Japanese RPGs that were kind of like vying for my time. And Final Fantasy 12, once I got hooked, I definitely kind of blazed through that one. But
So my thing was, I really enjoyed it as a Final Fantasy.
Mhm.
I mean, I think at the time, overall, I would say I was still new to Final Fantasy. I mean, I did, 8 was my first game,
Mhm.
and then I played 7, and then I played 9, and then I played 10. But I had never played any of like the old school Final Fantasies.
Wow, yeah.
So I mean, I hadn't had a whole lot of exposure at the time. I think after this game is what actually inspired me to look into the old ones, um, just out of curiosity. And I really enjoyed, out of all the Final Fantasies I played, the systems and the mechanics of this game.
Dude.
A little more than the other ones. The story, I mean, the story was fine, but the characters I didn't like as much. But
Yeah, though there's definitely a lot of depth here, and I think it also leads. Well, you say the systems and the battle system, which I like as well, but it's also I think one of the reasons that this is one of the more divisive Final Fantasy games, and not like kind of shit on like Final Fantasy 13. There are people who definitely love this game, and then there's people who really don't like it, and I think one is those systems, which I guess we'll talk about in a second, and the other
Mhm.
one is just sort of the world, the presentation, and the characters, and the writing and stuff, which is very different from your typical Final Fantasy, and that's because this is the first Final Fantasy that was directed by Yasumi Matsuno, who most people know as the guy who made Final Fantasy Tactics, which again is a lot like this in terms of tone and like characterizations, but also he did the Tactics Ogre and Ogre Battle series before he was ever at Square Enix, and again those are very similar. I mean he definitely, and Vagrant Story as well. There's definitely very different, like there's very specifically a political like undertones. In fact, he's even mentioned that a lot of his stories are sort of like allegories to real
Mhm.
historical like situations.
Really?
Yeah, so it's not surprised that this is a very political story, but that doesn't mean it's not fantastical. It actually gets a lot of shit for being a lot like Star Wars. Because it's sort of that old school traditional fantasy mixed with like futuristic technology, and
Technology, yeah.
when those merge, well, I mean, it looks a lot like Star Wars, right?
It does in a lot of cases, but I don't think.
Like the ships and stuff.
Yeah, the ships do, but I don't think that's really out of place. I mean, it seems like Star Wars was. I wouldn't. I would say there was a lot less fantasy in Star Wars in comparison to this.
Well, you're right, but let me
Mhm.
explain.
Okay.
Vaughn is the young youth, a little bit like
So,
Luke Skywalker, right?
okay, well, that whole
Although,
real quick, I will say that 12 suffers from a kind of having a shitty main character.
yeah,
That's one of the reasons because
well,
I was never a fan of
I'd like
Vaughn.
to talk about that too, but hold on.
Okay, so
Well, hold
yeah,
on,
Star Wars. Okay,
we'll start with Vaughn in a second. But
explain to me the Star
okay,
Wars.
so Vaughn, Luke Skywalker,
Vaughn,
although Vaughn
Luke,
never becomes a fucking Jedi or
correct.
anything, he stays
The princess
relative.
is there.
Princess Ash, right? Then you have
Hmm.
Balthier and Fran, which is kind of like Han and Chewbacca,
Han and Chewie.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Okay.
then I don't know. And then
What about like Pinello?
Penelo, she is, let's see, childhood friend of Vaughn, relatively unimportant. I'd say she's Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't fucking know.
What? No, no. That's got to be like the wise old
I'm
guy.
kidding. I'm
I mean,
kidding.
if anything,
Bosch,
Bosch
yeah,
would be
Bosch is
Obi-Wan
Obi-Wan
Kenobi.
Kenobi.
I don't know. Pinello can be fucking R2D2 or
There you
something.
go. She's R2D2 and C3PO in one tight little package.
Oh, she's like 12.
No, she's not.
No, she's not. I don't really know
I
their
don't.
ages.
I don't even like. I never use fucking Penelo.
Yeah, neither did I
So
really. Well, I mean, I tried to balance out my. She's 16.
okay. Oops. Well, hey,
Wait, so she's 17 in the American version, but 16 in the
yeah, they
Japanese.
do that sometimes. Just tweak the ages so it's less fucked up, but you know,
Less
ages are
fucked up.
differently. I think two
Yeah.
countries. So
If they wanted to make it less fucked up, wouldn't they have made her just 18? Just like, why stop at 17?
you gotta keep it a little dangerous, you know, a little titillate. I don't know. So here's the thing about Vaughn, and there's actually even been some rumors about maybe Vaughn wasn't originally the main character, but that it was actually Bosch, and that Vaughn was a character they made to appeal towards a younger audience or to a more Japanese audience or whatnot. But
Hmm.
and that for a long time that was the rumor, but a couple of years ago. Like Yasumi Matsuno, he does speak a little bit of English, and someone straight up asked him on Twitter about that, and his answer was no, that was never true.
Hmm.
Now, it might have been a misunderstanding on his part, or it might have been, maybe he typed it out certain. Like, I thought, it seemed pretty definitive that rumor was kind of squashed.
Yeah.
And no one. I mean, it was just me following him at the time. No one wrote up a fucking news article or anything because I guess that's kind of not, that interesting.
Not big news, yeah.
Yeah, it's not big news or anything, but a lot of people really still believe that, and I think it has more to do with the fact that Vaughn isn't really that interesting of a character. But let me pitch it for a second because I've always sort of felt a certain way about Vaughn. One, I think people hate him because he looks really stupid, and he
Hmm.
looks really stupid not because his hair's weird or not because he is annoying or anything, but because his outfit is dumb. But he's wearing
No, it's pretty dumb,
wearing
yeah.
a little nipple vest and it's stupid looking, but he's a street rat. He's
Hmm.
a street rat. He's like fucking Aladdin. It makes sense for his character that he's
Yeah.
not wearing these fancy fucking clothes. The other thing is, I think it's okay that the quote unquote main character, which I don't even know if there really is a main character in this game. It definitely seems more like Final Fantasy VI in that respect,
Hmm.
with the exception of when you're in towns, he's your
You have
avatar.
to be, yeah,
But you
yeah.
never have to use them in battle. And in fact, I
That's
I
true.
don't think there's ever a situation in this game where like the party splits apart and you have to use everyone. Like I think you literally never have to use him in battle after
So,
you get
to
character.
my knowledge, I mean, I didn't finish the game this time around. It's been a while since I finished it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you ever get split up like you would a la, Final Fantasy like 8 or 9 or 10, like where you actually can't control certain party members. I mean, at the beginning of the game, it's like that when they aren't permanent party members, but then once they join your party permanently, I don't think you ever not have the option to use them.
The other thing is he's not annoying like some of these other main characters. So I don't understand why he gets a lot of shit. He's not an asshole like Cloud. He's not brooding and fucking Squall, and he's not a stupid monkey boy like Zidane.
Yeah.
Or Titus, who's also kind of loud and annoying. He's just
You say Titus or Titus?
well, it's supposed to be Titus, but I called him Titus when I played it. I guess I just call him Titus by habit now.
Oh, okay.
Thanks. Um, and he's just kind of there. But I think that's the
Hmm.
point. Like if you think about it, if you look back on Yasumi Matsuno's previous works, he's always sort of telling the story through the eyes of someone else. And I think
Hmm.
in the case of Final Fantasy XII, Vaughn is simply the player. Notice that everyone around him, with the exception of Pinello, who might very much be just sort of the female player, everyone is super important to the story.
Hmm.
Like everyone's a fucking princess
All
or a
their
bounty hunter or the you know
they have really big character, like their like ideals and their like emotions. They're all very like there and very presently announced what they are, but Vaughn not so
well,
much.
that in their own personal like motivations and actions have a huge impact on the story,
Hmm.
in some way. Like they're important pieces
Hmm.
story, and in Vaughn and Pinello, they're just kind of there. So I've always kind of seen it as, maybe just you're experiencing this story through the eyes of a street rat, and that's just kind of the point of Vaughn, and there's not much else to it than that. You're just sort of
Hmm.
along for the adventure, much like he is. And I mean, think about like Final Fantasy Tactics. That is a story from someone else, like from a historian, about this one character or this one person, Ramza, who got kind of lost to history, and it's
Hmm.
the story of the events of Final Fantasy Tactics through his eyes. And he was of noble birth, but he wasn't like a major player in that. Or the story is about how he actually secretly did have a much bigger role than history remembers, and I just think that's kind of how Yasumi Matsuno, like I'm saying, Vaughn as this sort of viewpoint of the player is something that's very Matsuno. So I
No, no, I definitely see what you're saying. I mean, no one ever really said it like that, or I hadn't thought about it like that, but that definitely makes sense. Vaughn as just an avatar for the player. He doesn't talk that often, I guess, in respect to everyone else.
yeah,
And yeah, he's usually just kind of standing in the background a lot of the time. Yeah, that makes sense.
which is okay, and that again, it doesn't make him a great character, but hey, I think Balthier more than makes up for it. I fucking love that guy.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. He's the leading man. He did say that at one point.
That is, see, that's another thing. You have other characters like Balthier, kind of, especially Balthier, explaining that, hey, this is my story, like I'm the hero here. I think that's more of just sort of a wink at the player of like, hey, you're not the important one here.
Hmm.
It's these other people, which I think is okay. I think it's cool. It's different. Um, um, uh, so, well, I guess so. Let's just talk about systems or whatnot.
Sure.
Um, Sorry, my breakfast arrived.
Why are you eating while we're doing the podcast? Okay. So systems. What did you want to talk
Well,
about? Do you want to talk about combat? So one of the things is this is the first Final Fantasy that there wasn't random encounters.
yeah.
In the sense that every Final Fantasy before, when you're just roaming around, all of a sudden,
Well,
bam, encounter.
they were just out on the field, and a lot of people make
Well,
comparisons to Final Fantasy 12. I mean, Final Fantasy 11, which was straight up an MMO.
well, yeah. So yeah, yeah. Obviously, I don't. When I talk about Final Fantasies, talking about the series, I don't consider 11. You know what I'm saying? Just like 11 to 14 are completely different games.
Yeah.
So I don't really consider them when I'm talking about the Final
No,
Fantasy
I,
series.
I don't either. In fact, I don't play those games. I mean,
So yeah, so technically 11 did have, enemies roaming around the fields all day.
but that's the thing is the systems in this game were very MMO like in terms of like
Yeah.
auto attacking and kind of, obviously it's where the gamma system is kind of where it's different, but a lot of people were kind of upset initially because they thought, oh, this is just Final Fantasy 11 but with some new systems,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit like that, but it definitely has its own.
Well, they give you the ability to turn that off. You can turn active battle off, and you can turn it on to wait. So it's more like a traditional Final Fantasy in which battle pauses when you're making your
Well,
decisions.
but I think that's on by default. I don't think anyone. I mean, the only person I've ever known who actually left it in real time was David, and he had a really hard time with the game. I think he eventually turned it off,
Hmm.
but because it just moves too fast.
I played with it all on active battle.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, jeez. I don't.
and in 3 times speed.
Okay, jeez. Wow.
Well, I mean, at any point in time, if you press X, it'll pause and let you make your decisions
No,
and
but
stuff.
I'm saying there is an option where you can make it so it
Oh,
never
I see what you're
pauses when
saying.
you're making a
Never
decision.
pauses. Oh, okay. I didn't realize
Yeah,
that. Okay, yeah. Okay,
which
I
that seems
agree.
crazy to me
That's a little silly.
because another thing about this game is that it actually gets pretty difficult.
It does.
And at a time when like Final Fantasy games were kind of notorious for being too easy, when there was a lot
Mhm.
of other JRPGs out there that definitely presented much more of a challenge. I found the difficulty in this game kind of refreshing. I died a lot.
Refreshing, yeah.
The fact that there was enemies just sort of out in the field that can kill you really quickly, and you had to realize that there were just some enemies that you just shouldn't fuck with, and that was something else that was very much like an MMO,
Hmm.
which I
Yeah,
that was
that's
cool.
true. Enemies don't level up with you.
Yeah,
They're always the same level. With certain like in the first area, I don't know. I think it was the Easter Sand or the Wester Sand, one
yeah,
of the areas. When you go out there, there's a bunch of wolves and easy stuff, and all of a sudden there's like a big like T-Rex looking guy
yeah,
who at first won't attack you because they don't care about the peons.
yeah.
But you can go up and attack him if you want, which is a bad idea.
But that's cool.
Uh,
I like that. I like that.
mhm.
Um,
And so, I mean, it kind of gives you the chance to take on enemies that are too high of a level for you. But if you can, manage to, yeah, squeeze out a win, you'll definitely get the boost in experience and um license points.
yeah, for sure.
Just
And just back to the combat system, I think the thing that really sets it apart is the gambit system, which definitely
correct.
seemed unique at the time. I had never seen it's basically a scripting system that you can set up in such a way that your AI companions will do certain things based on certain triggers. Like you could set it to cast heal on me or any party member when they drop below like 50% hit points, and it led to some really unique tuning that let you kind of tailor the experience to play out exactly how you wanted. This is
Mhm.
very similar to the tactics menu in Dragon Age, but this predated Dragon Age, and I never really seen this level of depth in terms of scripting, and I really liked it. It's what made me like the Final Fantasy XII combat system.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really got into, especially because at the time when this game came out, I was selling mattresses.
Oh wow.
And so it was a boring job, and there would be hours on end and sometimes even days on end when I wouldn't see a customer. And so I'd bring my PS2 and a little TV to work with me, and I would play it. And the good thing was if a customer walked in, I didn't have to like pause the game. I could just let them finish out the combat because I know that my gambit system would usually 9 times out of 10 I just let it keep going fine
Yeah,
without me having to look at it.
and that's the
And I
and
Mhm.
that's the real satisfying part about the gamma system is sort of getting it to the point where and again this is why it's a little bit divisive, getting it to the point where it could just sort of play itself,
Mhm.
but I like
Well, I mean,
that.
so you have the basic things set, but then obviously, if you go into combat with like a judge or something, you're not going to have your regular gambits just take over. You need a little either fine tune it or just let them go on their own, and then jump in every like 30 seconds or something to make adjustments. Oh, use this attack instead. Oh, go after this guy instead.
You're right, but I mean look at what you just said. I mean a lot of other Final Fantasies are like that too, where the battles even though you're inputting all the commands, they're relatively mindless unless you're on like a harder
Hmm.
enemy or a boss and whatnot. So I think it's okay that you can kind of set it and forget it on your enemies that aren't that difficult.
Hmm.
But people seem to ignore the fact that setting up a really a really well made like gambit like script is gameplay and is something that can be very satisfying in and of itself. People sort of separate that out from quote unquote gameplay and act like that is not actually something that makes the gameplay exciting, but to me it definitely is.
Hmm.
It's fun here and it's fun in Dragon Age. I remember me and Nick used to have these sort of conversations about about this exact same thing in the original Dragon Age, about how he doesn't see that as like gameplay necessarily, and he doesn't like to spend his time in menus, but I love it because it's cool and it's satisfying, and you see like a real result if you do it right, and I just like that. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I completely agree with you. I think I'm a similar type personality that I like going into the systems and fine tuning things and adjusting them here and there when they're not working perfectly, just so I can. I mean, I enjoy that. So yeah, that's
You're a
one of the things
programmer,
I.
so that makes sense. And I was
Yeah.
definitely taking some programming classes in college, so I understand that
Well,
as well.
the thing with that is me being a programmer actually makes it more frustrating
Oh, because you're
because Yeah, because honestly, there is a lot you can do, but I'm also very limited in what I can do. I can say if an enemy's health is this, then do this. But I want to be able to say if an enemy's health is this and this, but not this, do that. Like I want,
Yeah,
like there's so many like as a programmer, like having free reign when I'm writing a program or whatever. I can do whatever I want, but in this I'm limited in what I can do,
true
which gets
that. True
frustrating.
that. And it seems like the designers originally intended that they wanted it to be somewhat. I mean, they wanted it to be somewhat limited because they didn't want to make the game, I guess, play itself. But they did that by sort of rolling out the gambits throughout the course of the game, which was kind of
Hmm.
frustrating because there were things that you think you should be able to do, but you just weren't until much
Yeah.
later in the game. And I found that a little bit frustrating. Luckily, I played this past month, I played the international version, and all the gambits
Hmm.
become available like as soon as you get to the first next new town, like after
So,
Rathenoster.
let's talk about that real quick,
Yeah.
because I played the original release
Hmm.
and you played the international version.
Yeah.
And so the main differences being, uh, like you're saying,
The license board. That's the
the,
main thing.
the gambits unlock in the next town. But yeah, the main difference is the license board, which we haven't talked about yet.
No. So the license board in the regular version, I mean, I don't know. It's sort of like
So when you played it, did you like it? So I will say that it was one of the, not I want to say confusing things for me when I first started playing, but I kind of get used to it because in every other Final Fantasy in the past, everybody was what they were.
yeah,
Cloud was always did swords. Whatever. Fucking Zell always had his fucking fist, and he was always punching and shit.
yeah,
Whatever. Each person was always the same.
yeah,
And at least for me, Final Fantasy XII was the first game in which any character could be anything,
yeah.
just as long as they had a weapon they could use and they had the license to use that weapon, they could do it.
Which is weird because the whole license thing is just a holdover because the world of Final Fantasy 12 is set in Ivalice, but it's very specifically set in the Ivalice that was created with the original Final Fantasy Tactics Advance,
Hmm.
which is not my favorite game, but in that game it's the same thing. You would have these laws and these restrictions, but in that game it was you have a judge. It was actually out on the battlefield.
Yeah, I did play that a
Oh,
little
okay.
bit, and I remember you'd get like yellow cards and shit.
Yeah,
Like you'd
exactly.
go into battle, and it's like you're not allowed to do this battle.
No fire magic. And you're like, fuck, my best character revolves around fire magic. It's kind of
Yeah.
bullshit. It was one of those reasons I hated that game
Mhm.
as much as I did. But, I mean, this is kind of a holdover from that where it's like, oh, you have to have the license to do these spells or to use these weapons, which is weird, but, kind of cool. I mean, the judges were definitely badass, so,
They were definitely completely different from how they were
yeah.
in Tactics Advance
Yeah,
or
for
whatever.
sure.
But
But the license
uh,
board, yeah,
so yeah,
it's kind of like the
essentially,
sphere grid a little bit.
that's what I was gonna say. It's similar to the sphere grid in the sense that you kind of can go wherever you want, but in as opposed to the sphere grid where you had to stay on the grid and go in a line and then break off every once in a while. This was definitely you could go anywhere you want whenever you wanted.
Yeah.
Now, one of the downsides with the original version was you couldn't tell what you were unlocking when you unlocked a new area on the sphere grid.
Yeah, it was
I
frustrating.
mean, sorry, on the license board. You could see that oh, it's an accessory or oh, it's a weapon, but you couldn't see what it was. So you had to unlock. You had to buy the license for this one point, and then it would almost in well, I guess it can't go in all four directions, but the most it would ever go is in three directions up, down, left, and right, whatever.
Yeah.
It would reveal what those ones are. So you could kind of sometimes you'd have to go searching for one. So say you got a really good weapon from the shop and you didn't have the license, you'd have to kind of go. What I would end up doing in the past is I would save my game and then just go searching for where it is on the license board, find it, reload my save, so I didn't waste a
You know,
bunch of
I
license
think I
points
think
trying
I
to
did
get
that
it.
exact same thing.
Yeah, because it was frustrating not knowing where it was and like wasting a bunch of license points that maybe you would be more useful on unlocking a new gambit slot or on the original version there was two sections. There was a section that were for like weapons and armor, and there was a section for like items and like spells and like passive abilities. And some of the stuff up there was like, oh, unlock this and you get 150 more health, or unlock this and you do more physical damage when attacking. And those ones are really useful. And so like I was always trying to like try and find those without like accidentally activating like I don't know some dumb thing I didn't want.
Yeah, and the main difference for the international version is it's even called the job class edition
It's
or
like
whatever.
Zodiac job
Yeah,
something.
Zodiac job class or whatever. And they separated the license board into a bunch of different job classes. And so like for the most part, like the actual things that are on the license board are in some form or another like holdovers from the original license board, but they're arranged in such a way and separated out in such a way that, progressing in a specific job class license board, you essentially become a very specific role in battle. And what's cool
Hmm.
about that is because what's cool about that is it kind of lets you take every party member you have and kind of give them a purpose in battle, and to and not have that issue that you have with a lot of other Final Fantasies where everybody by the end of the game is kind of doing the same fucking thing. You know what I mean? Everybody
Hmm.
can do everything, and it doesn't really matter because you.
Well, that's what ended up happening in my game. Is everyone would have the same weapon and the same shield or whatever because that was all the best gear at the time, and so everyone would just be doing the exact same thing. Unless I wanted one of them, I needed like ranged or something like that, and I would switch them to a gun or whatever. But yeah, like most of the time, and everyone ended up just doing the exact same thing, just because it was the most efficient way to get through combat.
But the other cool clever thing about that job class system is just the way they're arranged to like how it makes sense for their job class. Like I made Vaughn a monk, and
Hmm.
monks like traditionally in the Final Fantasy series have like really high hit points and do a lot of like physical damage and maybe some light healing and stuff. But what's cool is as soon as I started leveling up Vaughn, like all these hit points boosts are just right there from the beginning, and
Hmm.
and it lets you like immediately from the start already start like trending in the direction of like sort of what that job class does and what separates him from the other job classes. I really like this system. It makes the license board a lot more focused, which
Hmm.
is I think it needed. I'd say the only downside is that when you pick a class, you have to commit to it. You can't change job classes.
You can't change it once you've chosen it.
Exactly. So, which I guess makes sense because
I could see that at the beginning taking up a lot of time,
yeah,
just like going through each of the job classes and seeing what they can do and kind of like remembering, oh, this one's can do this and this one can do this. This one can't do this till later. I could see like maybe someone like Nick getting really frustrated with that because if you just make dumb decisions at the beginning and just put someone wherever, that's definitely not going to be a balanced team that you're looking for.
or even worse, what if you're like really obsessive like me and like I had to choose all six of my character's job classes like from the like before I even choose my first one.
Yeah. I could see that being very time consuming. I could see at least myself spending at least a couple of hours at the very beginning of the game just kind of laying out the path for my game.
It was definitely weird. Like I ended up making Balthier a white mage,
Hmm.
which seems doesn't really fit his character, but
Hmm.
but he has steal, the ability to steal items because I guess
Yeah.
he's a pirate, which is good
Hmm.
for a white mage because they could spend the first couple rounds in battle stealing, and then because they won't necessarily need to heal and they can't do a lot of physical damage. Just made sense for that character. Um,
Hmm.
so I don't know, but
No, no, that definitely makes sense. I see where you're coming from when you made that decision.
I definitely like this version because also because you have the ability to fast forward, which is
And that's something we talked about, I think, on the podcast a
yeah.
while back. That I think any RPG where you do any sort of grinding should have that ability, just built in, straight up. Like I think it should be limited to while you're in a position to grind. I don't think it should be like when you're doing a cutscene or walking around town. Well, maybe walking around town, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think it should definitely, just with the press of a button, be able to fast forward. It's not because we don't want to enjoy the game, but because
You're
it's
cover
very time
you're
consuming.
covering some pretty big expanses in this game for sure,
Hmm.
and it's nifty, especially if you're just getting through like fodder battles. You know,
Hmm.
I definitely got addicted to it, and I was kind of doing it a little too much. It's hard not to do it once you once you start doing it.
Yeah. Well, the thing with me was is since I played it the original version, which had no speed boost, I would just increase the frame rates of it. So almost the entire time I was playing this game, it was going at like 3 times speed, just to make things go a little quicker because of the fact that, oh, I've played this before. I know what's going on. I would stop it during cutscenes just so I could kind of remember because when I played it the first time back in '06 or whenever '07, whenever I played it, I don't want to say I wasn't as smart as I am now, but I definitely wasn't. And I just recently graduated high school, and I don't think I was getting the story as much.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm replaying it, I'm like, oh, this makes a whole lot more sense. Now I actually know what's going on.
Fuck that.
And so I did pay attention.
You should have seen, like, I was like when I played the original Tactics Ogre back in, I don't know, I mean, I guess I was in high school at the time, or
Back when gas was $1 a
just
gallon.
started fucking high school. I had no idea what was going on, and when I played it a couple of years ago, I was like, oh my god, this is so much deeper than I ever fucking realized. This stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's a Matsuno thing. I mean, he writes these stories not for kids. In fact, Vagrant Story is probably the first game I played with a dictionary by my side because I had no idea what half the words fucking meant. But
That's nice.
so so I don't know. I mean, what else is there really to say about like systems in this game? I like them because they're addictive because you're constantly getting like PP, like the points to like get new licenses. And as
PP.
they call them PP, what is it called, like the points you get to get like
It's
license
it's LP in the
license
original
points,
version. Yeah, license points. What? It's PP in the international?
No, I'm thinking of a different game, I think.
Oh, okay.
um so like yeah, you're constantly getting license points, so you're constantly unlocking new licenses, which means you're going to buy new spells and buy new weapons, and it just it the the unlocking had a pace to it that made it really addictive, which I was getting into even when I was playing it last month, and I should have been playing other games. I found myself playing this for long stretches just because I was kind of addicted to it.
hmm The funny thing is, for some reason, that made me think of it, is back when Final Fantasy X first came out,
Hmm.
I was kind of slightly confused at the beginning of how the sphere grid worked, and I thought that as I was battling these enemies, I was gaining levels, and that's what that number next to my name was.
Hmm.
And I was like, yeah, the number's going up, and eventually they kind of stopped going up, and like I'm not really getting more powerful. And then I realized that those were just the number of moves I could make on the sphere grid, and I hadn't upgraded in like 3 hours. I hadn't updated anything on the sphere grid. I was just running around fighting people, like wondering why I wasn't getting more powerful.
Hey,
I don't know.
there are some people who do a no sphere grid run of Final Fantasy X, which
Really?
sounds boring, to be honest. Uh, all these
Yeah,
RPGs, people always come up with these ways of playing them
making them more difficult,
by
or
like not using like any of the systems in the game, any of the meta
hmm
systems. But to me,
I think
that
I
always
think
seems
I think
super boring.
like someone or not too long ago was mentioning doing a level one run through of Kingdom Hearts where you don't level up or something like that the whole
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
And then like there's another one apparently where you don't switch keyblades from like the original one or something.
Well, I
It's
mean,
like, I don't see the point in that.
they always do it with games with like job classes too. Like there's like a Final Fantasy Tactics or a Final Fantasy V run where you like basically roll a dice and you pick a job class, and you just have to play through the entire game with just that job class for all your
Hmm
characters or whatever in Final Fantasy Tactics, which again is a cool challenge, but what if you end up with Oracle or whatever? I don't know. So, what else to say about 12? I think the world's
I
kind
mean,
of cool. I think Yasumi Matsuno does a really good job of creating the world, and although he didn't direct Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, he was responsible for creating the lore of that world,
hmm
and it's definitely even though it's called Ivalice, this is a very different Ivalice from the original Final Fantasy Tactics and Vagrant
hmm
Story, because there's like bunny rabbits and lizard people and shit. How did you feel about these weird races?
So I'm fine. I mean, like I said, this game definitely a lot more fantasy
Mm.
than what we could comparing it to Star Wars. Being, I mean, obviously they had different races, but those were more alien races, and I wouldn't consider these guys alien as much as I would consider them,
Yeah,
a fantasy style race.
they're fucking
And
elves and dwarves and stuff, the equivalent to kind of.
mhm, yeah, and so I'm fine with that. I mean, I don't mind playing in a world with crazy shit like that. I enjoyed, characters, whatever. They can each have their own. I don't know. I'm fine with it.
I,
I mean, one of the things I liked about 12 was the what's it called, the hunt system, or the clan primer or whatever.
yeah,
The hunts. I really enjoy doing stuff like that in games. I don't want to say I'm why. I mean, I really like. I just thinking of like something like Assassin's Creed, like the collectibles, like collecting things. Giving me something a task to do and having me go off and do it. one of the things I really liked about 12 is, I would, go to the job board or whatever, and find, so, oh, someone's like, oh, kill this for me, and then I'd have to go and find them, and be like, hey, I want to kill your like chico, whatever, little bird thing that's pestering you. Where is it at? He's like, oh, it's over there, and I go and kill it, and I get money and whatever. I
Yeah,
really enjoy doing stuff like that.
which is it was one of the cool parts about this game. It made it feel a lot more open ended, like you can kind of do things around the world,
Independent of the story.
independent of the story. Which again, another thing I really liked about the game, but it's just weird how this game is still so divisive.
Hmm.
Um, unlike 13, a different kind of divisive than 13.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
well,
13 has its
ultimately,
own
I
whole
really
other
liked the
set of
game.
things. Mhm.
I think it didn't wrap up so well though.
Yeah, I agree. To the point, I remember not enjoying the ending.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't even leave that big of an impact on me because I can't remember it. Granted, I did finish this game in like '07,
Yeah.
so it's been a while since, almost 7 years since I played it the first time. And once again, this time around, I didn't finish it. I got to Arcades,
Yeah.
which was it's a decent amount into the game.
Yeah.
And one of the things that fucking made me stop was having to get all those goddamn pine wood chops.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess we were talking about it on the podcast, but you don't remember having to do that.
Mm,
And I guess it's one of those things where you just block out a bad memory
yeah.
because you have to, like, in order to progress in the main story, you have to run around this town talking to people, and they tell you a story, and then you have to go and find the person who has like the other end of that story. And it's just so frustrating because you have to do it like 9 times.
Which seems
And
crazy.
yeah, a little bit. I think it was because I was frustrated that I had to do that, so I was kind of trying to rush through it, which made it take even longer. But I don't know.
I don't think I did like a ton of the extra stuff in this game because I think that at that time there's a lot of crazy stuff coming out.
Hmm.
So I didn't do like all of the hunts or whatnot just because I had other things to play. And but
Hmm.
I definitely kind of want to go back and play more of this game. But there's just so many other games that
That's always the reason. There's always more games,
uh,
and it's like sometimes people talk, like, even I will talk about getting upset that a game got delayed that I really wanted to play. But honestly, it's more of a gift than a curse because it's like I have more time to finish something else. Just because there are way too many games that come out that I want to play. And now that there's so many more indie developers releasing independent games, like, oh my God, there's just too much.
yeah, no kidding. So I think one of the reasons that some people blame the story kind of falling apart towards the end was
Hmm.
kind of the departure of the director of the game, the original
Hmm.
director of the game, Yasumi Matsuno, who again, we talked about. He did Vagrant Story and Tactics and all that stuff, but he apparently, and I was sort of looking it up online just now. It says a prolonged illness is the reason he left the project, and then
Hmm.
two of the other sort of producers sort of took over as the directors of the game, and I think they get sort of unfairly blamed for kind of screwing it up ultimately, and but I kind of don't know what happened. I know that the game was in development for a long time, like almost too long, and there was people kind of complaining about how long it was taking, but so here's the weird thing about Yasumi Matsuno is there, there's this illness that was cited, but he disappeared for a very, very long time. And that was the last project he ended up directing at Square until he showed up, of all places, as and how many years later was this? He showed up years later, like Final Fantasy 12 came out in 2006, so he probably left the
Hmm.
project like at least a couple years before it came out, where he sort of stepped down. He didn't show up again until he was a writer. He had the writing credit on Mad World for the Wii. Of all things,
Yeah.
he showed up as a writer on Mad World, which is super strange because it's definitely not what he's used to doing.
Hmm.
But here's the thing about Mad World: it actually has like a pretty interesting story for a game like that, and that's sort of one of the failings of its successor, Anarchy Reigns, like because Mad World was actually had this pretty compelling narrative. As silly and crazy and over the top as it was, you're kind of hooked throughout.
Hmm.
And I guess that's, partly because of Matsuno. I don't know. And after that, he kind of did some freelance work at Level 5, and then he went back. He got his old team back together, and he did that Tactics Ogre remake for
Yeah.
PSP. And now he's currently kickstarting a game, maybe unsuccessfully, which is a
What's it
shame.
at? There's only like a week or something left, right?
Okay, so the game is called Unsung Story, and it's very much another like strategy RPG in the vein of Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics. And Matsuno, he's created these two different these worlds. Like one is the world of Ivalice, which is what all these tactics games and stuff are set in. Like Final Fantasy
Hmm.
12, Final Fantasy Tactics, even Tactics Advance and Vagrant Story, all that's set in like this world of Ivalice. And then he did the world of the Ogre Battle series, which several games were set in as well. And that's kind of what he's known for, creating these really great worlds and like these really deep stories with just a lot of lore to them.
Hmm.
So he's creating like the world, but also writing the story for this game, Unsung Story, which is again straight up a strategy RPG like Tactics Ogre and like Final Fantasy Tactics. And I was very excited about this game, as a lot of other people were initially, and um, and it was doing really well early on. But if you look at the site KickTrack, which sort of tracks Kickstarters, but also does like trending predictions based on kind of how Kickstarters play out.
Hmm.
Um, it is now, well, right now set it at it's currently sitting at 471,000 um, out of
Out of
its
its 600,000 goal.
600,000 goal. But the thing is, in the first 2 days, it hit 300,000. So it
Hmm.
started out like super 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 fast, and then it just sort of like plateaued like completely. And for the past couple of weeks, it has barely rised anything at all.
Hmm.
I'd say for the past 2 weeks, it gained maybe $70,000,
Hmm.
and it only has a week left. And right now, according
So it ends February 14th is the last day.
yeah, February 14th. It is currently trending towards now on KickTrack. It's trending towards not hitting its goal,
Hmm.
and KickTrack does sort of figure in like those last minute bumps that these Kickstarters usually get. So unless something changes, like this game is still going to come out, but it's only going to be on mobile devices and whatnot.
Mm, yeah.
Um, how about you vamp for a little bit? I got to let my dogs out real quick.
Okay. So I mean, it's something we talked about this last week on the podcast that it's unfortunate. And Brad was mentioning that, oh, we got a big boost at the beginning, and that's usually just because someone hears, oh, Yatsume Matsuno is coming out with a new game, and everyone's like, oh, I'm on board. Everyone puts in the money. And then what happened was it kind of news came about that maybe he wasn't working on it as much as people thought he was,
So okay,
which
I'm back.
probably threw a lot of people off, and that's why a lot of them stopped buying into the Kickstarter.
Wait,
So,
he was never
mhm,
directing the game.
correct. They didn't really make that clear
Yeah.
when they first announced the Kickstarter, which confused some people when they found out that he definitely wasn't.
Because it's not a Japanese studio that's actually developing the game. It's actually this company called Playdeck that does a lot of like mobile development, but they're very
Mm,
respected mobile developers. They're responsible for doing these all the Ascension games on mobile devices and a lot of other various other like collectible card games or just card games
mhm.
on mobile devices. And this seems like a pretty good fit for them, but they're the ones who are going to be making the game. Matsuno, he's supervising development. I mean, the of course the story and the world were created by him, but also the original like the systems design, like the initial
Mhm.
pitch for how the game kind of plays is his choice. And if you've been following it, it is they are doing this weird thing where they're going to be using triangles instead of squares,
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
which kind of gives it like a hex based because they don't stand in the middle of the triangles, they stand on the intersections, which
Hmm.
means it kind of works like a hex system, but it allows for overlapping. I don't know, it seems different, but he's also kind of laid out how the job class system works, how you kind of level up, and how the weapon system works, and it actually all seems pretty interesting and developed in terms of like a concept. It's just they haven't shown much like they haven't shown any gameplay footage, because they're not really that far along in development, of course.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's what's hurting the Kickstarter. Also, the backer rewards are really, really kind of lame. And I
Mm.
think to have a successful Kickstarter, you need to actually have some pretty juicy backer rewards at not extremely high levels, but kind of that
It's
level.
just the incentive,
Yeah, you need some good rewards beyond just that, $20 to buy the game level. You know what I mean? Which most everyone is backing at. You need like the T-shirt level, for like $20 and more than that to really kind of bring in the dough. But if you look at them, it's all kind of lame shit until you.
No, I agree.
Um, so that's what sucks. But the thing is, they want this. They've been changing up, stretch goals and whatnot, and adding in, like, they originally, it was just gonna be an artist at Playdeck or whatever who was gonna do the artwork for the game. But I guess because they were desperate, they actually brought in, Akihiko Yoshida, to do the artwork, who does the artwork for all of Matsuno's games, and who's also doing, he's freelance now, also doing artwork for, he did the artwork for Bravely Default,
Hmm.
which is a game that just came out yesterday that again has a really, really great art style. So you'd think that people finding that out would get people to kind of open up their wallets a little bit more, but apparently it's not happening. I don't know. I'm worried. So the game will still get made if it hits its goal, but just even at the most basic level, was just like the actual goal of the project of the Kickstarter, I should say, was to get it on other systems. And at the
Correct.
600,000 gold, it was going to come to like PC and Mac and all that. If it doesn't hit its goal, it's going to stay on mobile phones,
Hmm.
which is a huge, huge, huge fucking bummer.
Hmm.
You know, I want at the very least be able to play this on my goddamn PC, and I'll be super pissed if I can't.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll buy a fucking Ouya or something if if it doesn't hit its goal, because I'm not.
You'll buy an unsung story box.
Yeah, I guess, because I really, really don't want to play this on my phone,
Hmm.
and I'll fight to do anything to keep me from touching a screen. So
Hmm.
I don't know. That's kind of.
No, I see what you're saying. It just sucks just in the situation because, they have all of these stretch goals, which are decent goals, but they're not going to hit any of them. It's unfortunate when you see a Kickstarter that has a lot of potential that doesn't, hit its goal, let alone stretch goals. Um, Especially when it's something you care about.
Yeah.
Because it's slightly confusing because, like you were saying earlier, like why aren't other people backing this? Like why don't you care about this? This is kind of a big
Well,
thing.
there's a lot of love for like Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre, so it's frustrating, but
Hmm.
you know, you see these other games from these fucking no-name developers like this Kingdom Come shit, which could be cool, but they're asking for, I think, less than this. They were asking for less on this game, but they're making a game on the scale of Skyrim. Like, I call bullshit on that, but well, I don't
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they have funds elsewhere, but you know these are not no-name game creators. These are very much
Hmm.
very well respected, I should say, game creators. So I was hoping it hit its goal. One thing we forgot to mention, Nolan. I don't know how long we've been going on here. We should probably wrap it up pretty soon.
Probably.
But there was like a spin-off to Final Fantasy XII, and I'm curious if you've ever played it or know much about it. On the original Nintendo DS, there was an RTS called Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings,
Hmm.
where you
Yeah, 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 I have heard of that.
you played as Vaughn and Pinello.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I played it actually.
Yeah, I played some of it. I stopped playing it just because I kind of fucking hate RTSs, but it's super weird because it's like this real-time strategy thing where you're like directing units to attack other units on the battlefield.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, which seems very a strange choice, but not that far off from something like Ogre Battle where you were kind of directing units around a battlefield in an RTS style fashion until you got
Hmm.
into like battle. But I don't know. I've always kind of wanted to go back and maybe play a little bit more of that game because I do like that universe. But
Yeah, I don't really remember a whole lot about it. I do remember playing it,
yeah,
but I mean, obviously, it didn't grab me as much because I don't remember it. I didn't remember until you brought it up, but I did play it a little bit. But I was thinking, like, maybe we should, to help Unsung Story, we should get with, like, Star Citizen, and maybe they can donate some of their money.
Yeah, right. Jesus fuck.
They're currently at
Oh
38.2
my
million.
god. I bet some of those guys too do like Final Fantasy Tactics, man. Those
Probably.
fuckers.
You should just like send them an email and be like, "Hey, you can spare like $100,000."
These fucking games, these fucking like the reason Star Citizen is doing so goddamn well, not just because people are buying ships, but because it's a throwback to these old like fucking Wing Commander and X-Wing versus TIE
Hmm.
Fighter games, and there was like the people who were playing those games back then were like super fucking nerds who no,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean
definitely. No, no, definitely they are.
like
Yeah.
PC gamers back then are different from PC gamers now. Like these were like hyper intelligent people, like fucking nerds who would play PC games back then. I'm sorry, I don't mean to call them nerds. We're all fucking nerds here. What I'm saying is these were people who were like already in college or beyond playing PC games in the 90s, like these kinds of games. I feel like so now
Hmm.
they're like these super smart, successful business people with all this disposable fucking income. And now it's like, hey, they're making this thing like those things I used to love back when I was a nerd in college. Let's give them all my money,
Hmm.
as opposed to something like a Mega Man Kickstarter, which that does pretty well too, but like it was mostly kids who were playing Mega Man back in the day, so it's not exactly bringing in the funds like something like Star Citizen does. It's really weird how all this works, but
Yeah.
like I'm saying, if I was kickstarting a game, I'd probably try to make something that appeals to that demographic. These
The people who have the money.
yeah, the people who have the money and the stuff that they played back in
Hmm.
the day. Um, if I was trying to make a buck, but
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, that's that. Final Fantasy 12. It's a good game. It's a good
No,
game.
definitely. I really when NLH chose it as his game, I actually kind of got a little bit excited.
I was
Uh,
pumped too because I had dabbled in the international version.
mhm,
I had never played that far into it, and I was glad it gave me an excuse to kind of go back to that.
mhm. And yeah, no, same here. I mean, I wanted to play the international. I didn't get around to doing it because I had the original version here, and so I just like, I'll just you play that. Um, but 12 was always one of my favorite Final Fantasy games, so I really liked going back and replaying it now that I'm a little older and a little wiser.
Yeah. It's always strange to me because I always thought when we started doing the subscriber of the month game, I always thought people were gonna pick games that that they think would be, well, like Fatal Frame and stuff. Like, oh man, it's my choice, and I'm finally gonna pick, GTA 4 because I want Brad to play that again, or what. But I'm surprised that almost every pick is like these very
Obscure, not obscure, but like
not
more of a personal
yeah,
choice. Like
personal.
this is a game I really enjoyed, and I want to see y'all play it. So yeah.
Exactly. They're almost always probably like nostalgia picks for people. Like
Hmm.
right now we're playing Medieval because our current subscriber of the month is Turn to Gold, which I imagine she was probably rather young when she first played Medieval. I mean, I don't know how she old is now, but Medieval is like a mid '90s PlayStation game, like 1997 or whatever.
Hmm.
And it's one of those games that I feel like maybe people probably liked when they were a little bit younger, but it's cool. It's got a nice sense of humor to it, and I'll
Hmm.
keep playing it. Does Nick plan to?
I believe he does. Yeah.
Okay, he better, cause fucking Nick. Uh, I don't want to keep playing this game, but we'll talk about that on a future podcast, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Thanks for joining me, Nolan. I guess
Yeah.
that kind of wraps it up. I,
Pretty much.
I want to thank NLH and a bunch of numbers again for donating, and I hope more
He
of
didn't.
you.
He didn't donate. I guess he donated in the sense that he's a
Yeah,
subscriber.
yeah, for subscribing,
But
I should say.
yeah. For those who don't know, subscribing really helps us out. And if you would like to have us play a game of your choice and actually be on the podcast with us talking about that game,
If you want.
uh, if you choose to, all you have to do is subscribe, and then you're automatically entered to be subscriber of the month. It's pretty simple. It's only $4.99 a month. Helps us out a lot, and
It more than just helps us
appreciate.
out. It's kind of our lifeblood. I mean, if we if we didn't have these subscribers, we wouldn't be able to do most of the things that we do. So it's absolutely like it's hugely important.
Yeah.
We kind of rely on you guys kind of supporting us. You know, ad revenue isn't what it used to be, so we need you guys. Otherwise, we can't, do things like upgrade equipment and travel when people really can't afford it out of their own pockets, or getting that extra person to a show to provide, like proper coverage for you guys. Doing necessary site upgrades and whatnot. It's all very, very important and necessary. But we try to come up with some things to kind of give you guys a chance to to have your kind of moment to shine, if you will, and pick the game you want, or just see some of the exclusive content, which you can also check out if you're a subscriber and you check out the subscriber part of our forums. There's lots of cool videos for you to watch just for you guys. So I guess that about does it.
Yep.
Thanks for joining me, Nolan.
Thanks for joining me, Brad.
We'll do this again sometime, maybe when we play a game pick a game that we both play. But
yeah, sounds good.
All right, and again, thanks again, NLH.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Peace.
Bye.